Do you as a pagan want to be more spiritual but have a busy and stressful life and feel, I just don't have time for this? You know what? Your ancestors had very busy and stressful lives too, and they still lived spiritually every single day. In this video, I'll show you how to reconnect with spirituality in a way that actually fits into a modern 9-to-5 life without adding more stress, more pressure, or more time to your day. Let's be honest, it's not that you don't care about being spiritual. It's that your life just doesn't seem to allow it. You've got work, deadlines, maybe kids, responsibilities that don't stop. And by the time you finally get a moment to breathe, you're exhausted. So when you think about spirituality, it starts to feel like something unrealistic. Something for people with more time, more energy, a calmer life. And that creates this constant low-level frustration. I want this, so why can't I make it work? The problem is, you've probably been given the wrong model of what spirituality is supposed to look like. Because if your only idea of being spiritual involves long rituals, perfect focus, or carving out big chunks of time, then yeah, of course it doesn't fit your life. But that's not how it used to work. For most of history, people didn't have more time than you do. They actually had less. And yet, spirituality wasn't something they struggled to fit in. It was something they built into the structure of their day. So instead of trying to force your life to look spiritual, what if you flipped it? What if your existing life, your routine, your stress, your responsibilities could become the foundation for your spiritual practice? That's exactly what we're going to explore in this video. And here's something that might be a bit uncomfortable, but important to realize. Most of the time, it's not that you don't have time, because spirituality doesn't actually require hours. It can take 10 seconds, 30 seconds, a couple of minutes, a single moment of awareness, intention, or gratitude. The real issue is that we don't prioritize it. Remember that time isn't something we have, it's something we take. Now, the reason we don't prioritize it is because deep down we don't see it as essential. We've been taught, directly or indirectly, that spirituality is something extra, something optional, something you should do if you're trying to be a better or more balanced person. So it ends up in the same category as things like going to the gym. I should do this, but I don't really have time right now. Other people, like us in Scandinavia, have been taught that spirituality is unnecessary and sometimes a bit weird and not something we should waste our time on. Either way, it's a very modern way of thinking. Because for most of human history, spirituality wasn't a self-improvement habit. It was a way of staying grounded, of creating meaning, of handling stress, uncertainty, and responsibility. It wasn't something that took energy away from life. It was something that supported life. And when you start to see it this way, something shifts. It stops being another task on your to-do list. And it starts becoming something that actually makes everything else feel more manageable, more intentional, and more meaningful. So where does that leave you? Because at the end of the day, this is your reality. You work a lot, you have got responsibilities, There are a million things you have to do and a million more you want to do. And no matter how you look at it, your time and energy are limited. So the question isn't, what's the perfect spiritual routine? No, the question is, what actually fits into a real busy life without adding more stress or pressure? Because if it's too complicated, too time-consuming, or too rigid, it's not going to last. And this is exactly where we need to shift gears. Instead of thinking in terms of big rituals or ideal routines, we're going to zoom in on something much simpler and much closer to how people have always practiced. Small, repeatable actions. Things you can do in seconds, not hours. Things that don't compete with your life, but fit inside it. So let's make this practical. First of all, you have to ask yourself, what do you actually mean by spirituality? Because the answer to that will shape everything you do. Depending on what you choose to define it as, it leads to very different daily habits. For some people, spirituality is about relationship, your connection to something beyond yourself, gods, spirits, ancestors, the cosmos itself. In that case, your practice is naturally going to look like interaction, offerings, prayers, moments of acknowledgement, building that relationship over time. For others, spirituality is more inward. It's about growth, about understanding yourself, finding your true nature, growing to your best self, becoming who you are meant to be, and finding your place in the all, and yoking yourself to it. And in that case, your practice might look a bit more like reflection, awareness, discipline, or self-development. And for some people, it's about both, and then you naturally do have to spend some more time. Let's also remember that 99% or more of our ancestors' spirituality was domestic and personal, or tied to the family and the home. It's not like we're bad at spirituality just because we don't spend all of our time at the grand rituals. Online and on social media, I see way more about the gods and big bloats than I do about the domestic cults and the everyday life. And I think that scares people off. It doesn't reflect reality. So let's instead start by digging where we stand. Our ancestors worked, they struggled, they raised families, they dealt with uncertainty every single day, and still they practiced spirituality, not by escaping life, but by integrating meaning into it. All tasks and duties were colored by spirituality and contact with the divine. To them, spirituality was routine, not separate activity. It was actually embedded into daily life rather than separated from it. So let's go through how you can bring that same mindset into a modern, busy 9-to-5 life. So let's start with authentic spiritual practices if we mainly consider spirituality to be about relationship with gods and spirits and ancestors, the cosmos, etc. One of the most important concepts within Indo-European paganism is hospitality. The relationship between human and divine was often understood in the same way as the relationship between host and guest. You welcome, you offer, you make space, and in return, connection happens. We don't get to be the guest if we're not first the host. We won't be given if we don't give. If we never open the door, never give anything, never acknowledge, then there is no relationship to step into. And daily spirituality is transactional and relational. And that's exactly where something as simple as an offering begins. So, for example, give a daily offering. Pour out some water, wine or beer, tea or coffee. Offer some grains or incense. Make it simple. Set aside a small piece of the food you've had, or invite your spiritual guests to the table when you have dinner. Offer something one of your ancestors loved to eat or drink. I often light a candle and say that our home is your home. Treat your guests as you would want it to be treated yourself. A daily offering doesn't have to take more than a minute, and I promise you it will feel meaningful. It builds the core ancient mindset that relationship through giving. Also, it's a great idea to take out what you've offered out in the garden, etc., for example, the next day. That way, the land spirits can take the physical part of the offering when the other divine kindreds have taken the spiritual part. The next thing we can do, remember that the hearth and the hearth cult was perhaps the most important to all pagan families. The home and the hearth is the main sacred space. So a great thing to do is to light and tend to the hearth fire every night. It doesn't have to be a full altar or hearth or fireplace per se. Light a candle at the center of the home. Light the candle with intention in the evening or morning or both. Offer something to the hearth goddess or say a short little prayer. If you have the time, just stay there for a minute or two. Another simple practice is to remember those who came before you. It doesn't have to be complicated at all. It can be as quick and simple as a passing thought during your day. Just stop for a while and give one or several of your ancestors a thought. Think of them, think of a memory, or acknowledge that you didn't appear out of nowhere. You come from somewhere. That you come from a long line of people who lived, struggled, survived, and made your life possible. Or you can even quietly say something like, "Walk with me today." It's a small moment, but it creates a sense of connection, continuity, and support that's always there if you choose to notice it. Very simple, very effective. If you have kids, storytelling can become a spiritual practice in itself. When you're reading to them at night, you can choose stories that carry something deeper. Stories about your ancestors or old myths and traditions, whatever you want. Doesn't at all have to be formal or educational. Just sharing those stories keeps something alive. It passes on memory, meaning, and a sense of belonging, both for them and for you. Next, we have two things that we can actually combine. Stay connected to nature and to acknowledge presence. Indo-European religions were deeply tied to land, cycles, and environment. So first of all, make sure to take a walk as often as you can. And when you do, be aware and mindful. Notice the weather, new flowers, plants that have budded. Acknowledge seasons changing. Observe how everything in life and nature is ingeniously connected and put together. And while outside, also take some micro moments to acknowledge presence. The sky, the sun or the moon, the wind, the trees, whatever. Everything's permeated by the same breath. And mentally note, I'm here and they are here. We're here at the same time. because this reinforces the sense that you're in a relationship, not alone in a neutral world, because we're not. We can add here too that it's a great idea to just look up as a cosmic orientation. Take 5 or 10 seconds to just look at the sky, day or night, and notice the sun, the moon, the clouds, the stars, anything. That's something I often do, even when I'm indoors. Just look out the window and register that I'm part of something bigger. This connects you to the cosmos without needing belief-heavy language. Another simple shift is this. Use moments that already exist in your day. When you're cooking, sitting down for a meal, or even just having a drink. These were traditionally moments where something small was added. A brief pause, a few words, a gesture of acknowledgement. It doesn't at all have to be elaborate. Just a way of marking the moment and inviting your spiritual guests. Show gratefulness with a few words, put out a portion of the food you've had to the gods and to the ancestors, pour a libation of what you've had to drink, etc. So instead of setting aside extra time for spirituality, you weave it into what you're already doing, whatever that is. And that way, it doesn't take more time than your day already requires, but it changes how that time feels. You don't have to pause your life for spirituality. Instead, do life spiritually. That's what your ancestors did. Another powerful practice is to mark transitions in your day, like when crossing the threshold, leaving the house, starting or coming home from work, going to sleep, etc. Ancient spirituality often focused on transitions. And this is very authentic, very powerful, and very fast. It can be things like saying a few words at the shift, thanking the spirit of the threshold for guarding your home, thanking the spirits of the home itself for everything you love about your home, pausing for just a breath before stepping out the door, briefly touching something meaningful, taking a second to become fully aware of what you're stepping into. Or even the kuraskymning mindfulness method that I mentioned in another video, so check that out too. Over time, these small transition points start to anchor your day. They create a sense of awareness and intention, and they turn ordinary moments, or ordinary movements rather, leaving, arriving, beginning, ending, into something that feels guided and meaningful. Okay, so what we've talked about so far has been about spirituality as relationship, connection to something beyond yourself. Now let's shift perspective for a moment and look at what spirituality can look like from the inside, about understanding yourself, finding your true nature and aligning your life with that. So more about awareness, discipline, and inner alignment. This too is something you both should and will have time to do. The first thing I think you should do is actually very simple. Dare to start asking yourself questions. That doesn't have to take a lot of time. You can do it lying in bed before you get up, while having breakfast, or before falling asleep, whenever. Just ask yourself things like, am I genuinely happy? Am I living up to my potential? If I weren't doing this, what would I be doing instead? What makes me happy? What do I dream of being or doing? And what parts of those dreams are a real need, something I really want to change or do, and how much of that is just fluff? You don't need immediate answers, of course. What matters is that you start creating space for honesty, because those small recurring questions, they have a way of slowly cutting through the noise and helping you see what's actually true for you. When it comes to meaning and purpose, we don't solve that before we can say Jack Robinson. But if you feel stuck in that loop, work, responsibilities, repeat, it's easy to think that finding meaning or purpose has to mean making a big life change straight away. But it usually doesn't. You don't need hours of free time or a complete reset. What you need is small moments of honesty and attention. Pay attention to what gives you energy, even briefly. What makes you feel engaged and in the zone? What sparks your curiosity? What feels meaningful? What makes you feel alive, even in a small way? And just as importantly, notice what drains you. Notice patterns in all of this. And then follow those signals, even in tiny steps. Read a page, watch one video, try one idea, go play football for an hour. Spend a few extra minutes on something that actually matters to you. Purpose isn't something you suddenly discover in one big moment. We have to listen to ourselves, pay attention and move little by little in the direction that feels true. So dare doing this. Another very powerful tool for personal spirituality and growth is journaling. And before you dismiss that, it doesn't have to be long, deep or time consuming. It can be as simple as taking a few minutes to write down your thoughts, or even just answering 2 to 3 questions at the end of the day. Things like, what felt meaningful today? When did I feel most like myself? What felt off? Where did I show up as my best self? These things are just a great start, because writing things down forces clarity. It helps you see patterns, understand yourself better, and slowly move closer to who you actually are. And if journaling doesn't seem cool enough for you, remember that many of the most respected thinkers in history, like the ancient Greeks and Romans, did exactly that. It's simple, but it works. And on the Humming platform, you'll find journaling guides and journaling challenges. So check that out. And next, try to improve and do one thing slightly better every day, because that actually reflects a very old mindset. Across Indo-European culture, there was a strong focus on striving, growth and excellence. The idea of fulfilling your potential and becoming the best version of yourself through your actions. Showing up well in what you do, even in small things. So pick, for example, one ordinary action and elevate it. Do that task with more focus, more care or more intention. Or, for example, listen fully to someone. That's to say, become a better listener, or finish something you'd normally avoid. Whatever you want. This is spiritual practice as self-mastery. You're practicing something deeply rooted, the pursuit of becoming better step by step. The last thing I'm going to bring up here is selfless service. Do something for someone or something else as often as you can. The oldest Indo-European word for selfless service, or what we today would understand as charity, actually also meant to act as the divine. The divine creates, upholds, acts, etc. all the time without anyone thanking them for it. Spirituality is also to act like these beings and to do great and beautiful things selflessly. I promise you that will change a lot for you. It doesn't at all have to be big dramatic acts, but small everyday things. Helping someone without being asked, listening fully instead of half paying attention, doing something kind without expecting anything in return. These moments might seem insignificant, but they do something important. They pull you out of your own head, out of constant self-focus, stress and pressure, and reconnect you with something larger than yourself. Because when you act in a way that's genuinely helpful, fair or kind, you're aligning with something deeper, something that feels and is right. And over time, those small acts shape not just your actions, but who you actually are. And there are at least 2 selfless service challenges on the Humming App platform. Check those out too. I really hope this helps. And remember that you don't have to add religion to your life. Instead, weave meaning into what you already do, because that's much closer to how ancient paganism actually worked.